Hey guys, and welcome to season 4 of the Us People podcast. I'm your host Savia Rocks, and in this season, we get to remember and reminisce back in time with some of our guests like...
Hey, we are Entity,
and you're listening to
the Us People podcast
with Savia Rocks.
Peace, my name is Oni. I'm a producer-engineer from Queens, New York.
Hi, my name is James Green. I'm a TV presenter, sports reporter and journalist.
Hi, this is Joy Langley and I'm the author of Navigating Stress.
Hey, this is Travis Glossop. I am a creative radio producer for Kiss FM and you're listening to the Us People podcast with Savia Rocks.
We highlight the strengths of our cultures, talking about diversity and inclusion, and speaking out loud and proud about who we are.
I was never that good. I was determined. I had a love for the sport, and that always fueled me.
At 49, I was seven years post-divorce after 22 years and 3 kids of a marriage. And so I knew that I needed to figure out what was happening for me and why was this such a severe sort of crack in my identity and how I showed up in the world.
It's great. I'm glad, because I'll be honest, I didn't really work that hard at uni, so it was good to leave uni and really get on it, really because I also, as a person, I think I value productivity. A lot of people live to work. I think I am one of the work to live guys, but because my work is amazing, that's all right with me. So as a person, I go to bed happy when I've had a productive day.
We've also saved the best till last by honouring another artist and showcasing their talent as our new theme song, with none other than your host, Savia Rocks, featuring in their song. So guys, enjoy, stay creative, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another. Let's go.
Hi, my name's Oliver Rolfe, and I'm author of The Holistic Guide to Your Health and Wellbeing Today. You're listening to the Us People podcast with Savia Rocks.
Peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and peace of mind.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host Savia Rocks, and today I am abundantly humbled to have the lovely Oliver here with me. Oliver is the founder and CEO. He is a top 50 best-selling author on Amazon, a life and career health and well-being consultant, and guest lecturer. I had to take a breath there just to say it. Oliver, thank you so much for taking your time and coming on the Us People podcast. How are you?
I am absolutely wonderful, and thank you genuinely and wholeheartedly for having me here. To be fair, I've already loved our conversation before we've started this, so I hope that we can continue it now.
No, definitely, most definitely. So the first question I have for you, which I love asking all my guests that come on the show, is could you tell me about yourself, where you grew up, but also how that influenced you, more importantly, to be the person who you are today?
It's obviously a pretty wide question, and I would always say I've been through quite a lot of experiences in my life, so I'll try and rattle through as much as I can in a shorter space of time to give you the full picture. But I've always believed genuinely that I grew up in a very privileged background. My parents got divorced when I was 5 or 6, which I think a lot of what the Western world does. But that in itself actually affected my family quite a lot of the time. So I've got an older brother, older sister, and a younger half brother. And at the time I said I was 5 or 6, and my brother and sister were quite affected by the divorce. And unfortunately for them, it ended up with my sister being anorexic and bulimic, and my brother going into rehab for drugs, drink, and gambling. Now, I'm very positive to say that my brother now runs a rehab clinic throughout the UK, or business throughout the UK. So he's really turned his life around and been a beacon, I would say, in many respects in his world and for other people as a show of what you can do, and a show of what you can achieve in a different sense of it not being monetary, not being something that you can spend it on or whatever it might be. It's an achievement that goes beyond. It's an achievement to live and survive effectively. And my sister, exactly the same, progressed massively from where she was, and is just the most wonderful person as well. So to have them as brothers and sisters is a great example to me. But throughout this scenario, so my dad also had 2 nervous breakdowns in that same situation. For me personally, from the ages of 6 to 16, I went through a lot of different health issues. Hence the reason my book is The Holistic Guide to Your Health and Wellbeing Today. But my health issues started early on, and between the ages of 6 to 16, I had 45 general anesthetic operations. I was asthmatic, and I was also about 55 pounds heavier, or probably about 4 stone heavier than I am today. So I went through a lot of changes as a young boy to a man, and had to accept a lot of things in many respects, whether it was my family situation, whether it was being unwell as a young boy. But I was so fortunate to have great support around me. My mother, my grandparents, in particular, was just such a huge influence. And one thing I actually usually forget, and I always leave it to the end, but I've now remembered. Throughout my early days, I had 2 quite dramatic incidences where I almost passed away twice. So the first was when I was about 3 years old. We were in Regent's Park, in fact, with my family on one of the rowboats. I'll do a long story short. The rowboat flipped upside down. I was with my sister, my mum, and my dad. My dad got out, my mum literally didn't get in, and my sister got out from the boat. I was unfortunately stuck underneath it. Now, all I could say from how I view things now and my memory was it was just black and dark and very little else. And fortunately, my sister came underneath, grabbed me out, and got me free. Needless to say, that could have been quite a drastically different event. And the second one, so going through the operations that I had, say 40 operations, quite a lot. When you're younger, especially the ages of say 6 to 8, I think in particular, there are either 2 methods of putting you to sleep. It's either an injection in the back of the hand or gas and air. Now, I didn't really like the injections. I still don't, to be completely honest. It hurts and I don't like it. So I always kind of chose the gas and air route. Now, I think back in the day, they used to lay almost a pipe on your chest and blow the air in your general vicinity. And my first few operations, I was like, okay, this is not great. I don't like the smell and blah blah blah, but it kind of knocks you out. So I remember for this operation, I mentally prepared myself, and I thought, you know what, I don't like the gas, so I'm going to try and take a big gulp and just not take it in. Now, the slight issue with this scenario was that instead of putting, you're way ahead of me. Instead of putting the pipe on my chest, they put a mask on my face. Now I went, do you know what? I'm still going ahead with this plan. And bearing in mind, I must have been about 8 years old. So they put the mask on, and I took a huge gulp of this air. And obviously, within about 30 seconds, I knocked myself out. And my mum was there at the time, and she kind of looked down at me and spoke to the anaesthetists, who are now kind of getting ready for the operation. And she was like, excuse me, why is he turning blue? And obviously at that moment, they realized I've stopped breathing, kicked her out the room, resuscitated me, and started again. Needless to say, didn't do that again. But it was, it was one of those kind of young things you do, and you don't really know any better, and you think you're just kind of staying away from a bad smell or taste or whatever. So I was fortunate to have got through those 2 events at a very young age. And actually, when you look back at it, you kind of appreciate to a degree that you're still here in many respects. But I generally have a true belief that we have a path, and we have a choice to be on the path or not on the path. And I really generally want to be on my path. And I've understood this throughout my journey. So I go subsequently fast forward to a few other different events. And this is a very long story, getting all of this done. But I had a very traumatic relationship with a girlfriend who actually was still very friendly with now. But at the time, wildly in love, things happened. She ended up basically getting pregnant, said it was mine, wasn't mine. I knew that. She kind of knew that. And unfortunately, it was at the same time as my brother was in rehab as well. So um, I couldn't really lean on my family at that point. Or no, not that I couldn't. I'll take that back. It's not the fact that I couldn't. It's that I really felt that I shouldn't. I think they were going through, or I felt they were going through enough. I was at university as well, and university for me with that scenario and then subsequent, elements in it was just such a hard time for me. And I look back at it as one of the biggest growing points in my life that I just had to deal with it, whatever it was. And I remember being sad and lonely and depressed and upset with myself as much as other things, and just in some of the choices that I was making. And bearing in mind I was a young guy at the time. But I think, again, it's looking back at these scenarios and going, okay, well, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have done the
Yeah.
wrong thing. I think the point is to get through those mistakes and to learn from those mistakes and progress from those mistakes. So I had all of that going on as well. And then the final thing I kind of utilized more than anything else in regards to who I am or why I am as much as anything else. So about 11 years ago, I slipped a disc in my back called the thoracic, roughly around about the middle of your back, other side. So that was a huge moment in terms of my life. I was a huge sports person, played football continuously, one of my biggest passions, and unfortunately had to give it up. Actually, after not even the first disc, I kind of got back from the first disc and ended up slipping another disc at my neck. That one disc to two discs went on to 7 damaged discs in my back, neck, and spine. And then subsequently, I was diagnosed with something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is an
Okay.
inflammatory disease of the spine. Now, that basically meant I had to change my life. Or again, doesn't mean you have to do anything, but I really genuinely felt for me to um, be the best of me or to live my best life, I
Yeah.
really felt I needed to make the change. And we talked about this just before we started about being aware of mentally, as well as the physical side of it. The physical side of it, I was always aware of. Um, but I was and you look through the events that I've just discussed, I was so mentally affected by so many of them, whether it was me going through the operation, my dad being in or having two nervous breakdowns, my brother and sister being affected, um, the deep relationship that I had to go through, the illnesses, etc., etc. All of these traumas, and I call them traumas because that's really what they were.
Yeah.
I look back on now, and I will always feel or be able to feel all of them, because I think as a human being, if you're connected, and I feel quite a lot, I can always put myself back into a point. But when I look back now, I don't look back at it with trepidation or negativity. I look back at what I've learned from it, or I can still learn from it as well. I still believe there are lessons that have happened that I'm still probably processing to one form or another. And realistically, I was very fortunate to a degree of. So in 2019, just before COVID, I published my first book, which is called The Survivor's Guide to Your Career Today. And it was very much directed towards 16 to 25-year-olds, latter stages of education, early stages of career. And this is really a book that encompassed all the work that I had done throughout my career as a headhunter and a consultant. Um, and then subsequently, what was it, 3 months later, and I was waiting to 2020 to market the first book, and 3 months later, COVID hit. So that kind of blew those plans out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I actually got COVID in the February before it was even COVID. I didn't know. I was just very ill. So we kind of got through that scenario, and it seems like no one else in the house got it. And I remember in March, and it being the most wonderful weather, and everything was beautiful. And we were outside in the garden, the kids were playing, and everyone was, kind of massively fearful of life, but still really enjoying the sun.
That's the truth.
And it was, wasn't it? It's like, this is amazing, but I can't go outside just in case. Someone coughed over there. I'm staying here. I remember sitting in the garden with my wife, and I just turned around to her. I just said, I can't do this. And I think she turned around and said, you can't do what exactly? And I said, look, I can't sit here and do nothing. We have no idea how long this is going to last. We have no idea what the scenario is. I said, I need to go and do something. And I had a second book ready. And trust me, this book was never in my mind to write for probably a good 2, 3, 4 years. And subsequently, 11 months from the middle of March, I had a publishing deal, and basically the book was written with 4 other co-editors who guided to a degree on the chapters they helped with, and edited what they could, and gave me guidance and confidence. And all I can say now, and I put something else out with a bit of advertising today, and all I genuinely can say with this is that I'm so truly proud of what's been achieved. And I can hear it in my voice. My voice is cracking a bit. I always get emotional when I talk about this, because it just means so much, genuinely. Not just the fact that it's an achievement, because it's one of the greatest achievements that I've ever done or been involved in. But I think for me, it's actually what it can do, and the potential of it. And that for me is something that is driving me to put so much weight behind it, so much time behind it, so much effort behind it. And it really is a true passion of mine to just try and make people more aware. And really, I think if, boiling this down to what it is, it's about self-awareness and self-control. And the more self-aware we are, the better prepared we are, because really everyone's health is individualistic, and no one's health is a blanket thing that you can look at and go, right, this thing is good for everyone, because it's not.
That's true.
And the more that you're aware of who you are, and I would say maybe what affects you, and again, physically, mentally, emotionally, that's what really is the key. So that, in a nutshell, and it's a big nutshell, I admit, that is where I am, who I am, and where I've come from.
I love that. That's a story to tell. I will say one thing: you were meant to be on Earth. Through all your trials and tribulations of you being under a boat, for all the operations, for you turning blue like I did, because mine was, I didn't want to do the dentist thing where they pulled out 6 of my teeth. So I did exactly the same thing. That's why I was laughing.
Now I know. I wasn't too sure. I think we were just taking the mic. Okay.
No.
Okay.
It was exactly.
So I'm glad it's not just me.
It was exactly the same thing. My mum looked and said, "What's wrong with my child?" They took her out the room and they had to do something similar. That's why I was laughing.
Oh, amazing! So synchronicity. That's why I love the world. Synchronicity.
That's what I mean on the connections of souls. I always say to people, even if you walk past somebody for that brief moment and you look at them, they look at you, you were meant to meet that person, because in another past life you could have been anything towards that person, and they know you. They don't know why they know you, they just know you, and it's just one of those things. So that's why it came and it resonated with me very well. So that's something I definitely was like, yeah, I remember that too. So that was cool. So no, you're definitely meant to be here, Oliver. There is a reason for you. And if you wasn't here, I wouldn't be having this beautiful moment with you and just talking to you about your story that you've just shared with all the things that have happened. So even before I move on, thank you. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
So my next one for you actually coincides with your first question, but goes more into depth of who you are as a person. When I say, can you define yourself as a person, and who do you see when you look in the mirror? But on the flip side of that question, has there ever been a time where you have looked in the mirror and not recognize the person staring back at you, how did you manage to transform who you were in a negative space back into a positive space of you being the humble person that you are today?
Wow, that's a huge
It's
question.
massive.
How do you start that question? Okay, so I would say I'm a wildly different person to who I was, especially through the darkest days, and also in the younger days. I would definitely say I would have been selfish and self-obsessed to a degree because I think that's all I knew. Um, being realistic and being honest. Today, I think it's the complete opposite. I am far more passionate, focused passionate, rather than just being passionate about life, so to speak. I'm willing to take on a lot of responsibility and happily to take on other responsibility, which I also am aware that a lot of other people don't want to, or in some instances can't. And I feel that as long as I'm aware of myself, and going back to what I think you said before, and being aware of my own mental health and my own capacity, I'm willing to give far more of myself today than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And I believe if I have this energy, which I do, and I think I'm in a good time of life to utilize my experience and to give back at the same time as progress, then I really think that's one of the most important things. And I'll add on to that. So the same day my second book, The Holistic Guide to Your Health and Wellbeing Today, was released, I actually launched a charitable trust called Etc. ETC, and Etc. is education to career. And the whole point of education to career, in my view, with this was that my first book, which is focused on, as I said, 16 to 25-year-olds, I'm now offering every single secondary school, university, and business school in England a free copy to put in their library, just for everyone to have the opportunity to read and have this book available to them. Because I think there's information in there that is just not available elsewhere. And I've got a YouTube channel, and on that YouTube channel I've got links to the book and videos to the book in certain chapters to guide people through. I've also got a presentation to guide people through, and these are the things that I want to continue doing, which is also why I'm now a guest lecturer, and I'm currently signing up for a mentorship program as well, with dare I say, less fortunate young people going through schooling and just trying to be there for someone else, which you're always trying to balance your own time. But I just feel that if you can do something else and you can maximize your time, and whether you've got the time available, I think time can always be available if you want it to be available.
That's true.
For me, this is the thing, and these are the elements that I'm looking at my life now and going, right, this is where I am, this is who I am. And obviously the book is such a huge part of that. And going to your question, you say, have you ever looked in the mirror and been in a dark place and progressed from it? I think I've been in so many dark places in such a period of my life, and I've never delved into drugs. It's not something that I've wanted to do. And the funny thing is, you get older. For me, the cleaner I want to be,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking about. I'm not saying that for me, I love red wine, and I'll put it out there. I'm a big fan of red wine. I really enjoy red wine, but it's not. And I tell my kids this: is that it's not about getting drunk. You don't do these things to have the effect. It's the enjoyment of it, rather than the need to get away from something else. And being truthful, if I look at my life today, taking your question one step further forward, and I thought about this the other day, and it goes up and down. Let's be fair with what I'm about to say, but I am genuinely so blessed that I have, I've managed to build a company for myself, and all of the hard work which came with it, which is 13 years of proper graft, and then another 10 years on top of that. The 2 books, and as I said, the second book is one of the proudest, if not the proudest, achievement of my life. But on top of that, and really the most important thing, is I have got such a beautiful family that I love truly. And I mean, my wife, my 2 kids, my dog, and he is a 3rd child. He's brilliant. I genuinely feel today that I'm so fortunate to have the experience. And to finalize on that question, someone once asked me, what do you want in life? And I've always said the same thing: I want everything. And that's not me being arrogant, and it's not me being greedy, and it's not me wanting to take, but I want everything. I want to experience a family of love. I want to experience success in my business. I want to be creative in what I do and achieve that success as well. And I want to be able to help people at the same time, and have a family around me over and above my immediate family that are close and loving and kind and helpful and generous. And truly, that is what I call everything.
That's enough for me. I think you've done most probably a high majority of them already. Believe me. Believe me, you have. So I have a connection to the question. When was the last time you felt your vulnerability was a strength and gave you power?
I probably in some ways feel vulnerable every day, because of the truth that I put out of myself. So I have a following of 20 odd thousand people on social media, which I'm becoming more and more open with, and more, I won't say truthful, because that seems I wasn't being truthful before, but more and more truthful of myself.
I understand it.
And being of myself,
Yeah.
I would say, because you can put out news and you can put out whatever you want on social media, and that it is obviously the truth. But when you're putting yourself there, that's the different vulnerability. But in what I do, so I basically, my day to day is obviously finding people and helping banks and businesses build their teams and whatever it may be. But when I work with people, it's very much from a connected basis. It's not a money first mentality. And I think that's kind of the core of the business, actually, is the fact that we look after the whole of an individual or a career or a company. It's not just going, well, look, if we do X plus Y, then we'll get paid. That was in fact the main reason why I started my company. So we didn't have that mentality, and we were always able to go over and above and do realistically what is right for the individuals than anything else, for good or for bad. So I say on that basis, it's being the authentic me that has been and constantly is my most vulnerable moments.
I love that. So let's talk about the book, okay? We're going to get into the book. So I wrote loads of questions on this. As you know, I hold books dear to my heart. When we was having our chat before, me and Oliver were saying how hard it is to actually take your time and patience to write a book, from getting what you want in your mind onto a piece of paper, in order to serve and share our vulnerability and our education that we feel we can give to you. So my first question for you is, we know a little bit about the book and why you wrote it. We can see you are emotionally attached to it. We can see that you feel so authentically blessed to have it. But I would love for you to share with the guests more about the book, in the sense of, like, when I was reading, you've got things like understanding your immune system, you've got the chakras, which I am a big fan of understanding, being a Buddhist. You have so many things in your book. It's hard for me to stamp out a specific part to say, let's talk about this. But one of the things that people always talk to me about, which is having a healthy lifestyle. I think that's very important. So I might start there because on my page there's like it goes all the way down. Okay. So for anybody reading your book and saying that they want to have a healthier lifestyle, and I don't mean just eating, I mean mentally too. Okay. What would your advice be on having a healthier lifestyle of living, eating maybe, and also, but mentally also?
It's a great place to start. One thing I will say to you, when you mentioned about two people crossing and their soul connection, that's also about the chakra energy field as well, and what we put out there. And the chakras are amazing. And the easy thing is, so I'll talk about that very briefly because I like talking about the areas that people might see as a bit maybe strange or a bit woo woo or a bit out there. And actually, the whole point of the way that I've tried to put the book together is to explain what these elements are.
Yeah.
So the chakra systems are, or the chakras are energy transducers. And the best way to describe that is the fact that throughout COVID, everyone said the same things that, Zoom's not really working. I'm missing something. I'm not feeling you. I don't get your energy. But you're already saying the words. If people are saying literally these same things, like, no, that is the point. You are not getting each other's energy.
Yeah.
That is the exact point. And each of our chakras, and we have 7 physical chakras, and it goes up to, I think, 22, 23 in a whole spiritual element. But focusing on the physical, there are 7 physical chakras which open up over a 7-year period.
Yeah.
But each of these connects to our physical body. So this comes to the wholeness of health as well, about looking after everything, which, going back to what you're saying in regards to a healthy lifestyle, healthy living and a healthy lifestyle covers so many different elements. And it's a case of taking the walks in nature, giving
Yes.
yourself time. And as I mentioned to you before, I'm one of my biggest weaknesses probably is and has always been being wildly impatient. And I've got my book literally next to me here, and I'm using it, and I've got my notes in it as well, which actually my whole family's numerology numbers as well I've got in here. And the fact that I'm using it, I love, because there is so much useful information. Forget the fact that I wrote the book for a second, but there is genuinely so much factual, scientific research in the book that it's impossible to remember it all, first and foremost, I would say. And that's why, I've had a lot of reviews, and a lot of the reviewers have said is this is, I'll paraphrase, this is a great book, but don't put it away. Don't read it and put it away. Leave it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with that. And it's funny at what you said in regards to your connection to how you see things and how the book's laid out for you, is the fact that that's how I feel it's useful as well, because it's broken down in individual parts or chunks or whatever it might be. You can just go and read one page and kind of go, okay, I'm done now. I'll put it down and I'll pick it up another time. And actually, for the first time today, and it's quite strange it's never strange, it's always what it's meant to be. For the first time today, I was going through the book, I shouldn't say the book, but the Holistic Guide to Health and Wellbeing today, and started to specifically highlight and turn pages down and just put things to one side that I want to read again or want to review. And this is, bear in mind, I wrote this thing. I'm going through it as someone else would ever go through it. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that there is so much detail in there that, you know, the immune system, that's probably the easiest bit. It talks about a link to the immune system, what the immune system is. And the immune system, after COVID, I think we all just needed a view on it and an
Yes.
understanding of what it is.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom line with the book is that it's about looking after the wholeness, the completeness of self and of your own health and well-being. And I go back to what I said before, it's your own health and well-being. There will be things in the book that are not relevant to you, which is great. Do you know what? Put a little X by it and go, do you know what? I don't want to do that. It doesn't work for me. Or maybe come back to it at a later date. That is the beauty of it. It is for you to read, to invariably learn and understand something new. One of the things for me which has been so heavily important is the gut, or the gut terrain. and the
Yes.
terrain theory. Now, our guts and our stomach are really the key to so much, whether it's our own, well, as someone said, it's, your gut has its own pharmacy in it. So the more that you invariably manifest that pharmacy, the better you are. So if you think about sugar, talking about healthy living and lifestyle, sugar is one of the biggest problems in the planet. I would
Yep.
say, I'll say most people, I was going to say about 70% of the planet, I would assume, has some form of sugar addiction, and a genuine addiction. A lot of people, I was having this conversation the other day this weekend, and people were saying, yeah, about 3, 4 o'clock, I get an urge. I've got to have whatever it might be. And no one has to have anything. If you're having an urge, you have an addiction to something. Your
Yeah.
body is crying out to something. So, it's these kind of elements that, you're making yourself aware of. Even things like screen time, screens and screen time. Talk about that. Now, screen time, and I'm sure I've definitely done this, and anyone who's listened to this, could be at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, you look down at your watch going, why am I still awake? I've got work tomorrow, and I should have been in bed literally like 3, 4 hours ago. And basically we're being tricked by the light, and basically it's the red, green, and importantly the blue light of the screens affect our circadian rhythms.
Yes.
And with even a flash of light, it can wake your body up. So we've got the pineal gland, which is somewhere around the forehead, and it's an energy transducer for light, magnetic energy, and temperature, or heat, so to speak. And automatically that controls so much. So I know it was affecting me even when. So my wife goes to bed quite early. If I'm going to bed later and I have the torch on my phone on, and the light kind of shines in my face, automatically I feel like I'm a level or two more awake than I would ever be. So I've put my phone down to the lowest possible setting of brightness, just so it doesn't happen. So just, as I said, I felt that this was affecting me. You shouldn't be laughing about this. It's true.
No, I understand it. My partner sits there with the iPad, and then it
Yeah.
goes, it happens every day at the same at the same time. It goes poof on her on her face, and I said, "Honey, you need to go to sleep." No, I'm up. And then she wakes up. My wife, she wakes up, and then it's just she stays up. But I understand what you mean, because it keeps you up thinking that your brain has a mechanism inside, and it goes, no, I'm up, it's light, I have to be up. So no, I do understand it, but sometimes my wife's gonna tell me off when I say this. Sometimes when people are doing something, and with the iPad especially, or a computer like you're saying, we can think to ourselves, no, we have to stay up, no, we've got to do this, no, there's a reason why I'm doing it. But it's not healthy for us, and I learned that. So when I shut my computer, that's it, it's gone. And me especially when you're an interviewer or anybody who does anything on a computer, there's millions of us that do things on a computer. We need to understand this. So I'm glad you shared that, because that's something that I want people to resonate with. And I'm not laughing. I'm just laughing that I see so many people do that. So many on the bus, on the train, they fall asleep, but for some reason they are addicted. And it's like sugar.
Yeah.
Technology
Yeah.
has become like sugar. That's a good analogy.
Well, it's the endorphins, isn't it, as
There
well,
you
that it
go.
provides people. And that's a whole different addiction, which I think we're entering into a whole new world of mental health, unfortunately. And this is a real concern, that we are in, realistically, one of the most difficult times that we've been in. You're talking
Yeah.
about global recession, world war, energy crisis, people losing their jobs. There's not enough money around. We're just coming out of COVID. You had we're talking about only 10 years ago, or just over 10 years ago, we had the biggest financial crash of basically all time since the 1920s.
Yeah.
So we are reeling from constant pain, and also throwing Brexit into that as well, that we're still coming through and we're still progressing from. And it's caused huge global diversity. Throughout the last 40 years, we had globalization, and literally over the last 10, you're having the accelerated version of deglobalization everywhere.
Yes, that's true.
Countries aren't together now. When you talk about, or the news talks about anything, it's never a positive unity. It's them and us. And it goes against everything that we've been building for and trying to develop and deliver, and talking about the planet being in a better place. And actually, we're going down a very negative route again. It's a very difficult time, I feel, for a lot of people.
I feel like, and I've said this before, sometimes I feel like the news and the media inflicts fear into people. And when you inflict fear into people, you instantly take their energy and absorb that into using it in the way that you want to for power. Now, a lot of people might be too scared to say that, but I am saying it because it is the truth. It's not a lie. It's actually the truth. If you inflict fear into somebody, you're instantly taking their energy, which you consume into your own power. Then that tells you of what you can do into manipulating that person to gain your own power from what you need. It's one of those things that I've had to educate myself on. But I just feel that it can be changed, but we need to consistently have positive people who have positive, strong minds to change that narrative. And there are a lot of us. Look, Oliver, you are one of them. I am one of them. We're two people having a conversation. This conversation can go out to millions of people to instantly make them understand that fear is not always a bad thing. Fear can be turned into strength if you don't deny what you're fearing and turn it around into something positive. Remember, with every action, there is a reaction. With every negative, there is a positive. You just need to go into your negative and find the positive, pull it out, and you'll find the light. And this is what we need to consistently do with people every day. So that's just my analogy on it, really, to be honest.
No, I agree with you. There's always a yin to the yang.
Exactly.
And it is looking at the positive side for everything. And you are absolutely right in saying fear is one of the biggest control mechanisms ever. And it's, it's even being aware of not reading the news the whole time, not watching the news the whole time, not having constant bombardment of other people's opinions in your brain.
Yeah.
Try and get the facts and then make your own mind up rather than letting someone else make their mind up for you.
No, that's true. That's definitely true. Let's talk about numbers. I am a big fan of numbers and what they mean. Somebody said to me that they were driving down a motorway and they kept seeing the same number, but the number was trying to tell them to call their father, because numbers are such a scientific, beautiful manifestation of who we are. It just takes you time to educate yourself on it and understand it. But I would love for you to educate me even more, and even the people who are listening, on numbers and how you find numbers give us depth into who we are in our lives.
Well, I'm a huge advocate of numbers in so many different ways. I've seen them throughout my life consistently, and this book was a great moment to bring it all together, including the numerology side of it. So again, going back to what I said about the chakra system, and people hear numerology, they kind of go, well, isn't that kind of like astrology? And I go, well, there's a kind of link. However, Pythagoras created numerology about 2,500 years ago, and Pythagoras, as most people would know, is one of the greatest mathematicians of all time. And the bottom line is Pythagoras understood that when you boil anything down in the universe, and you're talking about absolutely anything, the key common denominator of everything is a number. The only thing left after you boil anything down is a number. And this is why people have a thought process of, is this a simulation, i.e. the Matrix? Because that is the link. That's kind of how the Matrix was born as a film. That was the idea, and that's the whole point. We are boiled down to a number. So numerology in particular, I'll come back to the overall numbers in a second, but numerology particularly is there as a tool to understand your soul's contract, the contract that one signed before entering into the universe or into the planet. And people go, hold on, how does that work? How did you sign a contract before you came down, and how are you given the name you are? And this is where people can go, well, I don't believe a lot of this, which is fine. You can believe, you cannot believe. So numerology is really on the basis that we are reincarnates, and we come down to whether it's Earth or whether it's other planets, to be fair, and we are soul bound and contract bound to deliver the best of ourselves on this planet. And there are certain lessons that we must learn. There are certain lessons we must progress to. And invariably, if you don't learn these lessons, the chances of you coming back and relearning these lessons are probably quite high. But that's a whole different scenario. So within numerology, I was writing this book in particular, Holistic Guide to Health and Wellbeing Today, and Anne Perry, who is a world-renowned international numerologist, and I connected very heavily. And I had my reading with Anne, and basically I'd known quite a lot about numerology, and Anne reiterated and then exasperated what she had learned and where I was, and the connection to what my life is and should be and will be, and the path that I'm on. Just numerology gave me so much awareness, so much comfort, so much power to a degree, that I just felt that, I'm sure there are people who will be listening to this to a degree who feel maybe alone or unaware or unsure of themselves. And when you're in that position, I think having as much, I'm saying gratification is one thing, but having as much support and guidance and understanding and awareness, which I think this brings additional awareness, you're elevated to another level, because you go into yourself even more. You go, okay, well, this is exactly what I believed in, and it's now coming back to me in spades and in examples of a tool. And I think that in itself is such a powerful thing, and it's such a powerful situation, which is why for me, numerology is, I wouldn't say it's key, but it's just such a wonderful self-help and self-development tool. Now, that aside, and interestingly enough, what you said about your friend with numbers. So numbers are everywhere, and we are communicated in many different ways about many different numbers. And usually, a lot of the time, most people start with seeing either 111 or 1111. It's always the ones, funnily enough. And I've got a few examples of this. So when I started to go through this scenario, so I think my company was a few years old, and I kind of had started to cotton on with the fact that these numbers were all around me the whole time. And I was speaking to my wife about it, and I think I'd been traveling for work, and I was in Turin. My room number was 111. I was talking to someone about it, and I was literally going into my office door. And after 3 years of being in the same office, I looked down at the number, and it's 1.11. How I'd not seen this before, I had no idea. And I remember I was speaking to my wife about it, and we were in a queue for a museum, I think. And I was like, look, these numbers are everywhere. This is amazing / ridiculous. And kind of end up talking, and we were in this queue, as I said, and I looked at the watch, 11:11. I was like, look, it's here. It started again. And just another example. And the thing is, that 111 progressed onto so many different numbers. And there's a couple of moments in particular I can think of, but there is a moment, and the Holistic Guide to Health and Wellbeing Today takes out a lot of these numbers and gives you explanations about what they mean. So kind of makes life a little bit easier. But I was in a very frustrated state driving my car at one point, and I actually can't remember why I was frustrated, but it was probably something to do with work or some kind of issue in that ilk. And I was genuinely so frustrated, and I had this inclination / urge to look at the clock, and it was not a me thing. is the best way I can put it. It came from another place to make me look at something I wasn't looking at.
Yeah.
And as I said, I had this urge. My head just went bang. There was the clock, and it was 555. Now I happen to know that 555 is all about manifestation of change and progression, and it literally answered exactly what I had said out loud about 3 seconds beforehand. And all of that fear or worry and anxiety I was holding in my chest and my gut really just dissipated. It was so magical how this message came through, and literally all of this worry and fear melted away instantly. And this continuously happens everywhere I look, whether it's 1234, 444, 222. All of these messages are there, but it's being aware of it first and foremost. And then once you're aware of it, for me, it's going back to, so on my phone, I've got an app which gives me the same messages. So I'm able to remind myself of what the messages are. And now I've got the Holistic Guide to Your Health and Wellbeing Today, which is my own version of that as well. So numbers for me are, again, another awareness tool that you can utilize. The same as feathers on the ground. There are different feathers which mean different things. Animals that come into your life. Robins are very positive, etc., etc. And you know, if you can't have a look at your education and you think we were never taught any of this, and not only were you never taught any of this, you're still not taught any of this.
That's
So
true.
if no one's ever taught it, how is anyone ever aware? And you kind of think, right, let's just do something to raise that awareness and give people the opportunity to see that they have another option.
I love that. You've answered most probably 10 things that I would have asked you, all in that one question. Which is great. She's totally great. So one thing I would love to ask you is, what has been the best advice you have ever received from somebody?
Oh, I know exactly who that person was, because he's the most important person in my life, and unfortunately, not particularly well at the moment. He's getting to an age. So, as I mentioned, my parents got divorced when I was young, and my grandfather is my personal hero. A guy at the age of 16 who couldn't read or write. He went on to build a let's say a massive company and do exceptionally well for himself. But that aside, it's the person who he is and was. You know, he always taught me to speak to everyone, never put yourself above anyone.
Yes.
Always do the right things, learn, progress. And the one piece of advice, and there's actually the two pieces of advice he used to give me, is one, wipe your mouth and move on, which basically means if you've spent some money, wipe your mouth. Unfortunately, it's fine until like it's the fifth time he said it to you. I was like, how many times do I have to wipe my mouth? This is costing me a lot of money. So that was the one piece of advice I'm still getting onto now, but it is still right. It's the right thing to do. But the best piece of advice that he ever gave me, and it is very simple. It's slowly catch your monkey, and it really is genuinely true, because in a world that we look at from the outside in social media, and there's always been keeping up with the Joneses and all of this kind of element. Really, catchy slowly monkey for me now is taken on a whole new meaning to a degree, I would say, because actually it's being comfortable with yourself as well, because you wouldn't go slow unless you're comfortable with yourself. You wouldn't take the time to not put yourself under pressure unless you're comfortable with yourself. And for so long, I've always pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. It's been continuous, but I've never put myself or my family in a position of high risk, danger, or anything in a negative capacity, which I think a lot of people do because of, say, the keeping up with the Joneses mentality, or doing things that they just can't afford, or whatever it might be. I've always been kind of as much aware as possible, and you make mistakes as you go through life, certainly, But through those experiences and what he said to me, it stayed with me to make sure that I've always lived within my means, tried not to have huge debts or anything like that, and just take life as it is, not to live for tomorrow, not to live for what was, to take the moment as it is and do the best in this moment that's possible. And for me, that is how I live my life.
I think that's the best and most gratifying way to live your life. So you have a good mindset of, yeah, I agree with you. I only have 2 more for you, Oliver. And my second to last question is, when was the last time you felt totally at peace with yourself?
Sorry, can you just repeat that once more, please?
Yeah, of course. When was the last time you felt totally at peace with yourself?
If I were to say now, is that a get out of jail
No.
clause for a question?
Not at all. No, not at all. Not at all.
I'll be genuinely honest with you. When the Holistic Guide to Your Health and Wellbeing today came out, I felt a change within me. And it's hard for people to kind of understand that, I guess, because they go, "Oh, it's a book that you've written, and yeah, I'm sure you're proud of it, and I'm sure you know, blah blah blah." It is so much more than that. It is so much more than that. As I said, this book means the world to me, and what it can achieve, importantly, means the world to me. And any positive element that someone says about the book fills me with so much genuine joy and positivity that actually it's elevated me to a place of kind of going full circle, and then you realize what's important and what's not, if that makes sense. Which is why, as I said to you before about how I feel now with my family around me and the time we are in our lives, that this is the most peaceful, the most enjoyable moment I've had for many a year that I've ever been through. And coming into this year, I used to, for years and years and years with my business, I used to say to my wife, "As I look, this year, I have no idea what's going to happen. We probably won't have any business. We might have to shut down."
Aww.
And obviously, and she was like, "You're obviously being ridiculous. You're fine, and you've been doing this for a long time. You'll be fine." And she was right. But this year was that different element because of what had come before it. I've come into this year with so much optimism, and it's not just optimism about it being a successful year and blah blah blah. It's the optimism that I can continue to do what I'm doing and hopefully really leave a very positive mark for when I'm not here, and leave a positive mark for my children to look up to and say that their dad's done something that is, dare I say it, important and worthwhile. And that for me is probably giving me the most amount of peace and comfort that I've possibly ever felt.
I love that. So before I have a chance to say thank you to you, Oliver, I would love for people to be able to find you on all your social media platforms, or anywhere you feel anyone would like to contact you. Please let us know where we can find you.
So there's a few places to contact me. So first and foremost, LinkedIn is a great place to find me. And if you type in my name, Oliver Rolfe, Spartan International Group or Spartan International Executive Search is my company. You can also find us on Google, typing in Spartan International, or spartan-int.com. But if you need an email address, my email is info@spartan, SPARTAN-EXEC.com.
Nice and easy. See it there, guys? So please support Oliver. He has been such a beautiful guest, and he has actually been my first guest on season 4 for me to interview in 2023, which nobody knows, but now they know. So even though season 4 is already out, Obviously, Oliver will be part of season 4 and he's now part of the Us People family. So thank you so much, Oliver. Oliver, I want to thank you for coming on the show, for showing your kindness, your genuineness for the love of what you do and as a person, and for taking your time, because time is a precious tool that nobody knows how long we're going to be here for. So thank you for being a guest on the show.
Can I just say before we disappear is that obviously it's been a huge pleasure to spend time with you, to speak to you genuinely. Amazing how people connect instantly, and to speak to you has been so easy. You are not only a wonderfully genuine person, but just so positive in your outlook. And I think, as we had discussed before we started, how positive I was in terms of how you are, and being as honest and upfront and genuine. And please never stop that. And genuinely, I would love to stay in contact. I'd love to be back. I'd love to help you. And it is a pleasure to be part of the Us family. So thank you so much for having me on.
No, you're more than welcome. Guys, I want to thank you for listening to the Us People podcast, and please remember you can subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play and any other platform that you prefer listening to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and you can also donate to the Us People podcast by simply going to the Savia Rocks website or just typing in paypal.me/Us People podcast. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another.
Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind, peace of mind, peace of mind. I need a solution. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with her. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with confusion. Yeah, I'm done. I need a solution. Peace of mind, peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. Peace of mind, peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and peace of mind.
And I'll say it the other way around, is that, you know, throughout this process with the book, it's just been, or more importantly, the people that I've met have just been amazing, genuinely. And, you know, as I said, I can hear that you're genuine. I can hear that you're honest. I can hear that you're who you are. And that, you know, I spent 20 odd years of my career sitting down with people in the city and, you know, understanding people. And this is my whole point, is that there is the face and then there's the undertone, and sometimes the face and the undertone connect and are what you are, and that is so abundantly clear that is what you are. And I think people on this path, for one reason or another, or whatever you want to call it, just get to a point of that comfort. And I don't know whether it's, well, actually, maybe it is, but I would say maybe the awareness side of it. You're more aware of life, but actually you're more aware of death, and you're more aware of time, and you're more aware of whatever happens, we're going one way or another. So once you're in that mindset of being aware that it's not about you, it's about the collective, it's about the whole, you kind of you can live your life in a hopefully more positive way. Obviously, I could talk to you for hours. I feel very, very comfortable having a conversation with you. You've got such a lovely, smooth and silky voice as well. So I could just listen to your tone, which is obviously great for what you do, to be fair. Which is fine. But it's true. You have generally, even like the first moment you spoke, you've just got a smoothness which you feel quite calm with. You know, it's not an aggressive tone. It's very comforting. It's also quite a nice way to put it as well.